Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Brothers in Christ. It is Testimony Tuesday, and well, frankly, this is my first time doing it outside, so it's a new environment, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy, first of all, to be joined by a guest coming from Cardiff, Don Richardson. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, it's amazing to be here. Thanks.
Yeah,
John.
man, I really appreciate it. The last time I saw you was at my baptism
Yeah.
in 2023, so it's good. You're doing well, man, and you came. Yeah, you're here for a week or something like that until
Oh,
Saturday.
just a couple of days actually. So got down late Saturday night. So I'm based in Cardiff usually. Stay with my godparents who live in Hampstead, and popped down to my parents, and here I am. So
Yeah, man, I'm glad to have you down. And we're actually doing two episodes. So you're here to share your testimony about how you became a Christian, and then the next one's actually about university, which I'm actually gassed for. But I'm gassed for both of them. So I guess what I got to ask is, let's take it back to the beginning, your childhood. You know, what I mean, what was that like? Did you grow up in a Christian household? Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, I did grow up in a Christian household, and I was brought up part of a lovely youth group and youth setup, but not. It didn't necessarily make a transformative difference to my life for the first 10, 12 years or so, and it was something that I saw to be a good thing. You know, all the church stuff, all the Bible stuff. I thought it was probably good for the world, good for society, good way to live. But I didn't identify with it being an actual reality that would have an impact on my day-to-day life and have an impact on the decisions that I made. So yeah, that was a lot of my of how I describe my relationship with faith as a kid. And I love the songs, of course, because who doesn't love to sing "Our God is a great big God"? You know, what a tune. But there's a bit of a turning point where I just began to think about life a bit more deeply when I was about 10, 11, 12, and so part of that was that my mum was diagnosed with cancer. She wonderfully she was treated successfully, but there was an uncertain period of time going on there, and I think I was just having a slightly deeper think about what this whole thing in life was all about, and what made life worth living, and so I began to just think about things more deeply, read some more books, and one time, some friends from the church that I grew up at took me, very good friends of mine called Rob and Sam. They took me to a camp in Romsey, a Christian camp, and so I was 12 at this point. And it was a great fun week. We did lots of fun things, had Bible talks and sang songs as well, had that side of it. And then I started having some conversations with a minister there called Louis, and we were just talking about questions to do with faith, and he asked me where I was at, and I said, I thought it's a really good thing, Christianity. I'm not really sure how it's real, because if God is real, then who created God? Because if He created the universe, did someone need to create God? The classic things like that. I wasn't really sure about that. And then so we talked about things like that, and he gave some really thoughtful answers, talking about how the Bible describes God as being an uncreated one who's outside of time. So He doesn't need to be created because He's the one who created time, and so He is eternal because He's outside of that. And then at one point he just went to me, "Hey, Dom, look, you're clearly interested in this stuff. You're having to think about it. Let's just say here that we do believe that God is real, and let's say that something very bad happened. We died tomorrow. We go to heaven, and we're standing outside heaven, and God is there, and God says to you, why should I let you into heaven? What would you say?" And I said what I thought was the right answer, what I thought I understood about God, about religion at that point. And I said that, well, I think overall I've done a good job. I think I've been a relatively good human being. I don't think I've done anything too bad. I'm not perfect like anyone. I know I've got lots of things wrong, but I do my best and try to make a good job of it. And he went, look, Dom, you've completely misunderstood this. You've completely misunderstood what this is all about. That answer wouldn't get you in. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what is this whole Christian thing about? I've been going to church for years, and it wasn't that my church had been saying the wrong thing or hadn't been teaching the gospel. It was just that I hadn't understood it. And so he said to me, look, let's look up Ephesians chapter 3. And Ephesians chapter 3 is all about Paul, when he's writing to the Ephesian church, reminding them of God's great love for them and His saving grace for them, and really drills at home, and talks about I think it's either Ephesians 2 or Ephesians 3. My memory's forgetting me now, but talks about saying it is by grace you have been saved. So it's not through our works, but it's by grace. And the minister who I was chatting with, Louis, he asked me, what does that word mean to you, Dom? Grace? Do you know what that means? And I was like, is it like kindness? He was like, yeah. So it's undeserved love that we don't deserve, because we talk about ourselves being a little bit wrong and maybe not quite right, and but doing our best. Well, that's not good enough for God's holy standard, right? Even doing our best, we don't make God's standard. But what God's done is He's made a way where he's come into earth in human form. He's taken on all the things that we've got wrong on Himself, taken the punishment that we deserve when He died on the cross, so that you can be free. So there's nothing that you can do. It's only by accepting that grace that Jesus has given us. And in that moment, something just clicks, and I think, I guess that was the work of God's Spirit in me, just making that gospel message click, and something just clicked into place, and felt like everything was then lined up. So that was how I became a Christian.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was, what age was that?
So that was 12. Yeah. So I was 12, and I had a bit of further thinking about it, because I was at school by that point, where there's about 1,500 of us at that school. It was an all-boys school. It was a grammar school, and people didn't really have a lot of time for Christian stuff, right? It was a source of a bit of mockery and stuff, and like, you think this stuff, you're crazy, you can't be for real. So I, based on that challenge, I started to have, just being like, okay, if I think I'm going to become a Christian, and if I'm going to take this stuff seriously and for the impact that it's going to have in my life, I need to just make sure I've got this right. So I started reading some books like the God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, and then started reading some kind of quite atheistic books that would criticize religion, criticize Christianity, and in the end, I felt that they were some very clever people writing those things, but that were saying some quite silly things that were quite emotionally driven, and it kind of reinforced me, because I really wasn't convinced by the arguments that were being made in those books. It really reinforced me that, no, I think I'm on the right track here. I think Christianity, I think the worldview that makes sense in Christianity is the most persuasive thing that there is. And to quote C.S. Lewis, it's the whole thing about, it's not that I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, right? It's not just because I can see the sun that I believe in it. It's because from the sun's light I can see everything around me. And I think that was, for me, my conversion experience, that believing in Jesus, believing in Christianity, understanding the perspective that gave me in the world, helped me to have so much clarity that I just didn't have without Jesus and without Christianity.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you mentioned that name, that is a Richard Dawkins. I mean, it's like the four horsemen, like of atheism. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and all that lot. It's quite. I've never heard someone say that before. That really, his arguments, you didn't find persuasive and actually strengthened your faith in a way, because you found Christianity. I mean, I'm guessing you read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis during that time.
Not until much later.
Not too much later.
Yeah,
oh wow.
Yeah. But I think I did hear that C.S. Lewis quote banded about, as you do.
Yeah, it's a famous one.
Makes way into every other sermon, doesn't it?
Yeah, because those four people had a massive impact on removing people away from Christianity. And to see that it didn't have on you, well, that's amazing, really. Yeah,
I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the debate has moved on a lot since the whole new atheist stuff, and there's been a bit of, in the UK at least, where we're obviously based. There's been a lot that's been written in secular newspapers just about the rebirth of non-materialistic views, so spirituality coming back into wider society, and with that, it's also been shown in young people attending church far more than they used to. So in the thousands, there was all these, the 2000s, there were all these predictions about Christianity dying out in the West and other religions dying out in the West as kind of society moved forward and progressed, but that's not happened. And something I found really helpful was a man called Alistair McGrath, I don't know if you've heard of him.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of those names, isn't he? So, yeah, and he there's a lecture on YouTube that he gave a long time ago now, but it's called "Why God Won't Go Away," and in that he mentions about how in the God delusion and in other atheist writings, there's often a point where they come to the realization that spirituality is present in every sense, in every area of human existence, that everywhere where there's been humans, there's been spirituality in some context as part of the culture. And they can't figure out why, from a purely evolutionary aspect, that is. And Richard Dawkins, I think he describes it as a kind of almost as a meme, as a kind of almost like a faulty gene within us that's that's gone wrong, and we've got this spiritual sense as humans. I can't quite remember exactly how he put it. It was a long time ago, obviously, that I read the God delusion. But Alison McGrath talks about how, well, in some ways that really aligns with what we see in the Bible when in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, we read that God has set eternity in the human hearts, and that nothing in this world can satisfy that longing for eternity, which is a bit of a theme of Ecclesiastes. And again, I think that's something else where when we take an atheist worldview, it's very hard to explain, the human behaviour from purely only evolutionary perspective, and then actually we bring in perhaps a Christian worldview, and it makes a lot more sense that within us there is something in our hearts that each longs for God, and we're not content until God has filled that hole within us. There we go, slight stage malfunction there.
It's
Nice
alright.
one.
But yeah, I think first of all, I find it really fascinating that was like during the age of 12. Am I right? That's crazy. That's crazy for me to think of, because I only started researching, like, first of all, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and then like you get onto Justin Brearley. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Talking about like the rebirth of Christianity. Oh, I mean, this is a different topic for another day, but it's crazy how, I mean, you grew up doing it, like new atheism, I could say, because that was on the rise after like the terrorist attacks.
Yeah,
and
it
all
was.
that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's crazy to see, because I got heavily into that last year. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's great. So, what was the process? I mean, because I don't know, did you do confirmation after baptism? What was that?
Yeah,
process?
that's right. Yeah. So I had already become a Christian by the time that I did confirmation, but obviously I was a very young Christian and had a lot to learn and a lot of areas to mature in. And so my church ran confirmation classes. So I'm part of the church I go to is part of the Church of England, and within that, when you're a lot of people are often baptised when they're babies, so that was the case with me. And then when you get to the age of about 14, if you want to, you take confirmation classes where you go into the gospel in a bit more detail, and then if you're happy to and you believe that that's genuinely true, that's where you make a public declaration that, if you like, confirms your baptism. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, when I was 14, I was confirmed.
And was that, would you say, like, that definitely, I don't know about you, was a very like pivotal moment in your faith? Because were you infant baptized then?
I was. Yeah. Baptized a baby.
But the confirmation was just to confirm that baptism, am I right?
Yeah, exactly. It was that public declaration saying that I've been baptized as a baby, so brought up in a church-going family, and that as an adult now, at the age of 14, semi-adult anyway, that I could make him publicly say that I want to live for Jesus and I want to follow him, and I think that's what I find to be right.
Yeah. And then how, since that moment, it's been how many years now? 6, 8. It's been like 12 years now since that moment, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2026.
Wow.
Old man,
so
age, yeah.
How has your walk with Christ really been from that? Because in the I would have talked about university, but we'll get to that in the next episode, won't we?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, really, from that age of 14, of course, you've gone through sixth form, you've probably gone through so many other moments that have been struggling in your faith. What's been your walk with Christ since then, now to present? It's a massive question, I understand.
It's a big question, isn't it? So I think there were definitely some easier times and there were some harder times. So being a Christian at the school that I mentioned, where there was kind of a very big school, all boys school, sort of state school that was pretty survival of the fittest. It could be quite brutal at times. It was quite difficult being what I think for most of the time I was what felt like the only Christian in the year. I wasn't sure if there were many others or any others who were actually practicing Christians. So sticking out in that was quite challenging at times, and I think I definitely wrestled with doubts. But in some ways, it also really pushed me to continue to think more deeply. I remember once in RE, we were shown a Stephen Hawking documentary where he essentially said that he got to the point where he thought that we could effectively discount God from any sort of meaningful conversation. I remember watching that documentary, going away and thinking, I need to really think about this and how I'm going to respond, because that was the task of our class, and I think the teacher took quite a clearly, overtly atheist viewpoint and outlook, and that really challenged me to kind of go away and go, no, I don't think this is right, I disagree, and I'm going to think really hard, and I'm going to go and give a really good response. So things like that were really helpful. And then but there were other times where I remember there was I was in a classroom once, and it was in a chemistry class, and there was something about my Christian beliefs which a friend asked me, and I said, yeah, I do that is the case. How I'd relate to girls, and how I'd my outlook on that. And I remember then this kind of whisper just going around the class, and the kind of laughter that was going along with it. And after that class in the playground, it was not a fun hour for me, as I got kind of absolute pelters about my viewpoints and my kind of convictions as a Christian, that I took it seriously, and that was quite a challenging moment. But what was really good was that I had a very good youth group at St Nicholas Church, where I grew up at. So that was wonderful, that you didn't feel like you were kind of completely alone. So that was really helpful, and that was great. And then as I got towards my later teens, I went through a bit more of a challenging period. So there were a couple of people that I knew quite well, including one person actually who was my own age, who kind of suddenly passed away, and that I think was a bit of a kind of a challenge to my faith, and for a while life felt a bit meaningless, and was there was a brief period where I think I was just struggling a bit, not with all the classic things, just like am I drinking alcohol to kind of try and mask away feelings of like the pointlessness of life? Am I having a healthy relationship with that? So that was a very challenging period. But yeah, wonderfully, with the help of good friends, that people that I could be open and honest with, God brought me through that. And then going to university which we'll talk more about later on. Going to university was incredible. It was fantastic because I got stuck in with a Christian union, and just before I went to university, I worked for a year at that church that I grew up at, and just spending so much time in the Bible was so helpful for me, helping to reassure me of God's love for me, or also of the truth of His word, the fact that it's coherent, that it makes sense, and just building me up into a much more mature person, which is work that's ongoing. That's how I'd summarise the different parts of life since I became a Christian.
Yeah, you can tell, definitely. I mean, first of all, this has definitely been one of the, you're very how do I say, you got everything out about your testimony in a coherent way, and you can truly see, like, I could see God, like how He's worked and is working in you when you have been speaking, which has been really nice to see. And really, I'm wondering, because you're on this with a lot of different people when they go into university. That's where their faith is tested much. With you, it seemed like it was the opposite. I might be wrong, but you completely, like, I guess, got way more closer in your faith. I don't know if that's a wrong.
I think you're spot on. Right. So I think the difficulties in my faith perhaps mostly happened in my late teens, kind of mid to late teens, where I think I was feeling a bit lost, and I think a real inner part of me crying out to be loved and accepted by others, which is probably quite a common feeling, especially in teenagers. You know, we all have that real insecurity, don't we? But when I went to university, it was on the back of doing that work in my gap year for that church. And so when I went to university in the first few weeks, I remember someone saying to me, look, the first few weeks of university, you'll never have an opportunity to talk to more people about Jesus than you will at those first few weeks, or to invite people along to Christian events than those first few weeks. So make the most of it. So I think I was able to go in with the view towards Freshers of not of it being like, this is going to be the funnest point in my life. How much fun can I have in these few weeks? Instead, for me, it was like, how can I make the most opportunity? Just because, you know, not because I was particularly clever or kind of wiser than any other kind of 19-year-old or whatever. It's just because of the helpful perspective that I've had from others, and just about, using this time for God's glory and not my own kind of fun or my own idea of what would be a good time.
Yeah, and really, while going to the end of like your testimony, which has been great, by the way.
Yeah.
I've actually enjoyed. That was my first time ever hearing it, so it's been great, man. Is there anything, because there's going to be a lot of Christians watching this?
Yeah.
Is there anything I and the Christian and the Christians watching could pray for you about in this moment?
Thanks, Joel. Yeah. I think just that. So I think sometimes you get to your so I'm, I guess, 26, so mid to late 20s, and you know, you see lots of other friends that are taking other paths in life, and it can feel like perhaps you feel inadequate, or you feel lesser because you haven't maybe gone down a kind of all-consuming career path and achieved lots in that way, or you haven't gone out and had the funnest times of your life going on crazy world travel. By the way, there is nothing wrong with going travelling if you're a Christian, but just, you know, some of my friends who aren't Christian would do it in a way that would be different to how I would travel, if that makes sense. And so I think prayer just for confidence in the fact that trying to shape my life so that it lives in a way, it works in a way that is hopefully beneficial to God's kingdom, rather than kind of focused entirely on my own, you know, on myself, is the right and fulfilling way that's good. So I think we always need that continued confidence in that. So in I think it's Colossians, isn't it, where Paul talks about just as you've started in the gospel, in the hope that we have, continue in that. So don't step outside that. It's not that we become a Christian through the gospel and then we grow as a Christian outside of the gospel. It's that I think, to quote Tim Keller, we grow as Christians by becoming Christian through the gospel and then learning to apply the gospel in every area of our life. So I think praying that would be the case for me, that I'd be learning how best to apply the gospel in each area of my life would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I don't know about you, but I keep a prayer journal with me. I asked that question before I had every testimony, and so I write down their name, and also the people watching will pray. Will pray for you, but I write down just the names of what they need prayer for. So thank you for saying that. I'll definitely keep you in my prayers.
Well, thanks, mate.
And then really to the Christians, but there are also non-believers watching this as well. To the Christians and non-believers watching this, do you have anything else you'd like to end off to say to the Christians and then the non-believers?
Oh wow, yeah. So I think as I guess firstly to the Christians, continue to remember that the Christian life isn't described as being easy. Paul doesn't describe it as being easy, and it certainly wasn't easy for the disciples. And Jesus suffered a lot while he was on earth. So don't be discouraged by when it feels like you're kind of running against the grain of what everyone else is. But at the same time, perhaps like you're talking about with that prayer journal, make notes of all the blessings that God gives you, because if you're anything like me, I focus very heavily on the struggles, and I almost completely forget about the wonderful ways in which God has blessed me through living as a Christian. So I think that's really helpful. It's just spending time each day, just making notes about all the blessings that God has given you, and the ways that He's cared for you through perhaps difficult decisions that you've made or difficult moments in life, and just thanking Him for those, and then leaving the prayers of request or asking for things just for a different time, so that you've just got that time just focusing on thankfulness, and then just growing in that. So that'd be my encouragement to Christians. Something that I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm not very good at it. So there we go. So I can get better in that as well. It's encouragement to me as well. And then to those who aren't Christian, I think like firstly it's just so cool that if you're listening to Joel's podcast, you're thinking about life a bit more deeply. We're having that moment of actually there's more than is being offered to me by the secular world, and that you're probably not happy, I'm guessing, with the explanations that are given outside of Jesus, and I think that's a really common feeling. So don't be afraid to go and ask a Christian friend about that, and be really honest that you want to learn more, that you're curious, because that deserves respect. That feeling, that recognizing that actually there's more to life than I'm getting from a materialistic only worldview. I had a great discussion with a friend of mine who's not a Christian, and he was telling me he tried to have all the fun he could at university through all the means that you can imagine, and at the end he was just left with this real sense of just emptiness and meaningless, and that hadn't achieved anything. And alongside that, I'll just give the encouragement that what you're searching for, it's not in vain. Searching for something meaningful that isn't only materialistic is real, and there's lots of us that can testify to that. And so it's worth keeping on searching for that. It's worth bringing your doubts, and it's worth bringing your doubts both to your Christian friends and also to God in prayer, because just because you might not believe or accept Jesus right now doesn't mean that God will send you away if you come to Him. He will, He's a God who longs for more people to come to Him. So you're welcome to bring your prayers and your questions to Him in prayer. So that's something I'd really encourage you to do.
And there's definitely going to be non-believers, I know personally anyway, who've watched the podcast before, but who also do feel and reach out to me or their other Christian friends who, the secular world is not fulfilling them in a way. Especially with Christians as well. We see it when you try and put so many worldly things in this circle, but only God can fill it. Really, trying to fill worldly things in a God-centered hole, you could say, and it just never works. It never fills up. Only God can do that. So again, I think that's a great message for both Christians and non-believers. And so thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing your testimony. I appreciate you coming down, man. So we're going to the end of the testimony, and before I end off, every video I end off with something like this. So to the Christian watching this, I hope you can see how God has transformed Dom's life, how He's helped him through his struggles and through the good times. And if you're lukewarm or you're strong in your faith, remember this: pray, because God wants to speak to you. Go to church, get yourself a bunch of brothers and sisters in Christ, because it is important that we're united together as one. Listen to worship music, and make or create a Bible study, because it's so important. Just reading the Word just together on a daily is really important. And if you're a non-believer watching this, I hope that you've enjoyed, first of all, the podcast, but you also have learned really how much our faith means to us. This has been Joel Estrada-Castellon, the founder and host of Brothers in Christ, joined by
Dom Richardson.
And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I thought that went very well.
Do you think so?
I thought that went very well.
I feel like, sorry, I am so sorry.